On this episode of the podcast, I have with me George Bezerra. He is the VP of Data Science at Frontdoor. We're going to dive into talking about how you build a modern data warehouse. And I know there's some challenges George is facing in his role at Frontdoor. George, excited to have you on to talk about this.
Thanks, Amir. Same here. Very excited to talk about this with you and your audience.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I know in talking to you previously, you mentioned that obviously Frontdoor is part of a more established company. And you guys have some, I guess, typical constraints around your data warehouse. And maybe, I guess, a good starting point for the audience would be to kind of talk about at a high level what Frontdoor does. And then we kind of talk about what those challenges of your current warehouse infrastructure is.
So Frontdoor is, I would say, a young company on top of legacy brands. What we do is our primary business is we sell home warranties. So customers buy yearly warranties, and those warranties protect certain items in their homes. It could be appliances, it could be plumbing, it could be electrical. And there's a variety of options there when you sign up for a contract. And so if something goes wrong in your home, rather than having to call a contractor at random, we just call Frontdoor and we just go there and solve the problem for you. So that's what we do. As I said, we have multiple brands. The biggest and oldest one is called American Home Shield, and we have a few million customers around the country.
Awesome. So definitely sounds like an established company. With that comes established data processes, established infrastructure. I guess in terms of some of the challenges you were brought on to face, what does the current data infrastructure look like? And maybe what were some of the challenges that you're identifying?
Right. So I guess just to tie that back up to your previous question, Frontdoor was built on top of these legacy brands with the purpose of invest in technology and take these legacy systems and revamp them and create microservices, build a modern data stack, and really focus on customer experience, right? So when I started, and even before I started, what we had is a situation where our data exists in different databases that are siloed. Even within, same database, there are different departments that use it for different purposes. And so the data was very much fragmented, I would say. And it was very difficult for you to query the data. In many cases, for answering interesting questions about the business, you want to get data from different places, different databases, and aggregate that. But that was very difficult to do. And in fact, most of the databases were essentially production databases, not analytical databases. So that's where we were. I think very difficult to query, very difficult to get information. And also, we had siloed data culture where different departments are doing their own data analysis. They don't share information with each other. Same metrics have different definitions across departments. So I think, number one, that is very challenging, but that's also a pretty commonplace if you look around companies around the country. Even if your company has decided to invest in data and hires a new data leader, you're likely to expect a situation like this because data has been neglected for many years and the company wants to build a new data stack. And that's where I came in and we went from there.
I guess the challenge there is, you're coming in to establish processes and establish skill sets, right? If you're coming in and you're looking at a solution that's deeply entrenched in the company, obviously you guys are, sitting on top of much older brands. What are some of the challenges in those conversations, right? Because obviously people get used to what they get used to.
That is a significant challenge. So if you're like Frontdoor going through a transformation and investing in technology, we're going to face two main problems. One is the disparity between the old legacy technology. We have old databases. Some of those are on-prem, and it's very difficult to get rid of them and old applications, because everything is all interconnected. And it's very difficult for you to take one piece apart without destroying the whole thing. So the technology piece, having to do work with building new things while maintaining the old stuff, it's really, really complicated and really adds a lot of constraints. On the other side of things, there is the cultural dichotomy, right? You have people that have their modern, they think about technology, they're engineers, they're product people, and they have great ideas, they want to move fast. But you also have people that have been here for 40 years or 10 years or 20 years. And they've been doing the same thing for a very long time. I mean, it makes sense. Those brands like American Home Shields, they have been very successful, right, for so many years. And when that happens, there is not a lot of incentive for you to change. So there is, I would say, a level of skepticism with things like data science or machine learning. What does that mean, right? Or even technologies like Snowflake, like, oh, I've been doing my reports with this technology they have always been the same. They've never changed. Why do I have to change, right? And you have to sell the idea a little bit, and you have to be patient with people for them to get out of their comfort zone and adopt the new world, right? So I would say those are the biggest challenges that I have faced at Frontdoor so far.
Yeah, so it's funny. So, you mentioned Snowflake, and obviously the easy solution is, well, we're going to go to this new platform. It's going to solve all your problems. But what you're talking about is some of the human problems, the human challenges of, the entrenched processes, the entrenched skill sets, right? The other component is people not only get used to the process, but they have developed certain skill sets that they feel comfortable with. And now you're coming in potentially asking them to move on from that skill set or start gravitating towards a new skill set. That's an entirely different set of problems that you're probably tasked with.
Right. I think with data, especially the human problems are some of the most challenging ones, right? So I'll touch into the skill sets, but to give an idea, right, when you have this siloed infrastructure where different departments have the same metrics that are defined in different ways, right? They don't speak the same language. And getting those folks to agree, like they all know how important this is. They all know how difficult it's been to do business by speaking different languages and having metrics that don't match, don't tie up at the end of the day. But getting them to agree and actually move that forward, those discussions before I started have been going on for years, literally. How are you going to solve this problem? But still, they hadn't been able to agree and move forward. We are doing this now, finally, but it's been a battle, right? It's the human part of getting that agreement is challenging. So same with the skill set, right? You have an engineer or an IT person, right? Or a database administrator has been working with Oracle for years. And now you're asking them to learn Python and learn Snowflake and learn Looker. And it can be overwhelming, right? And a lot of those folks, they will catch on and they will pick it up. But there needs to be some coaching and there needs to be a good transition plan. Otherwise, they might not succeed, right? So it is difficult. But I would say the challenge is regarding the culture and this whole thing is how do you think differently, right? How do you take a step back and look at the problem as a whole and come up with a solution to that? What I've seen a lot is people who were just maintaining things and things break, they just patch it. But what we need to do is take a step back, look at the patterns that are happening and the problems and come up with overarching solution for that. And of course, we are able to do this, but it has been a challenge, right? Because a lot of folks from some of the legacy brands weren't used to it. So it's fantastic. I mean, the reason I'm doing this job is because it's hard. And it's a very interesting experience to see that dichotomy of the two worlds and dealing with the human problem associated with that.
And I guess, as you're kind of looking at the scope of what you're trying to undertake, and there's a human component, both from a process and a skill set. Obviously, you can't wait to line up all the dominoes and then knock them over. That could take a while, right? I mean, you have to develop a roadmap that potentially can deliver some quick wins that previously the company capabilities the company didn't have. Like, how do you work with the business in trying to define maybe that short term? We all like the short term quick wins and the long term roadmap. How do you kind of position those things to make sure you're still heading to the right final destination?
That is also a challenging problem. And I know that everyone else has the same type of problem. But the thing about building a new data infrastructure is that those are massive projects. If you want to build a data warehouse, that's going to take years, right? And obviously, it's never going to end to an extent. You're always going to be improving it. But going from nothing to something, some kind of roadmap, it's going to be over a year of work. And you want to prioritize, of course. But it is difficult because nobody likes a 1-year project, right? There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of costs. Where's the value? And in data, it's difficult to quantify the value. A lot of the value is indirect. And it's about, you will be able to answer questions that you cannot answer now, or you'll be able to do things you cannot do now. And those are fairly challenging selling points compared to some other things, right? Because in the end of the day, everyone agrees how important it is. Everyone agrees how critical it is. But when we look at the cost and the time and compare to another project that might give you revenue in the short term, but not solve your long-term issues, that discussion is challenging. It's hard to compete, right? But gladly, the senior leadership understands the value and is willing to invest. But finding the short wins, I don't think that's too difficult because usually, whenever there's revenue associated, right, there's revenue possibilities. Like you're working with marketing, for example, those are the short wins. There's very easy ways of like adding Snowflake, which we probably will talk more about that. But having Snowflake has been a game changer. We can now build all these marketing pipelines. We can onboard these new vendors, none of which was possible. So there's certainly a lot of short-term wins. I think the challenge is how do you not just do that and actually focus on doing things that will take you in the long term to the right place, such as deprecating legacy technology. If you have a bunch of different reporting systems that people use, it's very difficult to take people out of that. Right? Because, I've been using this report for a while. Why do I want to learn this new report? Do I need to rebuild this report? That's going to be a lot of work. So I'm not sure if I'm digressing there, but I think it's the idea of, yes, short-term wins are not so difficult to find. You need them. But at the same time is how do you take a stand where, yes, I'm going to do this, but I also have to do the other stuff. And that means slowing down some of the short-term things. That is a critical challenge that obviously I experience and know that everyone else experiences that as well. I don't think that's novelty, but it's certainly top of mind for us.
I tell you what, in my previous life, I was in the BI space I'd mentioned to you before, and I could tell you 15 years ago, I had a CFO of a large company in LA ask me multiple times a month, why is the plumbing taking so long? I want these pixel perfect reports. And every time I'd say, because I can't give you reports if the plumbing doesn't flush properly. And I couldn't, he's a CFO, fantastic guy, but it was that waiting. And then much like you, we were like, well, what can marketing do? And it's like, well, I don't have any of the underlying structures. Now, you guys have, things have modernized, right? We were talking on-prem everything, 15, 20 years ago, a lot of challenges, but now you have Snowflake and you mentioned marketing. And I was going to talk about that and how you're taking the technology, looking at what the marketing needs, going, I can still deliver something now, and what the conversation looks like and what's going on in your mind, thinking, how does this fit with the big vision of, again, you're trying to sunset some of that older technology and still have that marketing and product that they need, pretty quickly still fit into the overall puzzle.
Yeah. So the way I think about it is that every short-term project needs to have some kind of foundational piece going on. Say marketing has a request and, we want to do this and want to build these pipelines and onboard this vendor and run these campaigns. And as part of the scope, we're going to have to build some things. And rather than building something that is focusing only on the short term, the scope will increase a little bit and we're actually going to build a strong foundation. And so from there, let's say we're going to work with operations. They have some reports that are breaking and they need those reports to be solved. And so, yes, we're not just going to migrate your reports from one, let's say Power BI to Looker. We're actually going to build the underlying data model and pull all of that data and model all of that. That will increase the scope of the project by a lot, that's for sure. We're always trying to make it short, but the idea is that we are solving the short-term problem by building the foundation as well. So it is a trade-off. It does increase the scope, but at least we're using the momentum of the request to take advantage of that to start building our infrastructure. So yes, I do have a roadmap that says we're going to build all of those things, but the reality is that varies in the sense that whatever is the most pressing need, which is constantly changing, I'll take whatever piece of my plan is that touches that and use that project to build that part of my infrastructure. Not sure if that was clear enough. If it's not, let me know.
I think most people listening probably, whether it's a data project or engineering project, software engineering, there's similar challenges, right? Like, people, on the software side, want to run a sprint and get something that's out. They can deliver an incremental component feature, whatever that is. That's a challenge because how small can you get it? In your case, your end users want to see a report of some kind of capability to look at the data differently. And obviously the constraints of the plumbing is always there. Now, you mentioned some things you can go around. I guess the flip side to that is, as your background in data science and machine learning, you get asked a lot, we'll just apply machine learning and you're going to solve my problems, right? And a lot of times then the pushback might be, well, you might not need machine learning. Let me show you what Tableau can do for you with the right underlying data. And it might be you don't need that big, tool to come out for a particular project.
That's right. Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think the expectations for what machine learning can do are, we think it's AI really, it's going to really do everything without the human even, but there's human in the loop, and what the problems can do require excellent data in a lot of cases, or a lot of data at least. And so there are so many constraints, and the scope of what the algorithms do is also usually very narrow. And so there's a lot of skill into narrowing down what you want to do into something that is actually a single algorithm that will solve that problem, right? So yes, it does happen. Like product folks will come to you and think that, oh, if we apply machine learning to this, problem solved. But it's far away from that. But in general, after one iteration working with someone like this, they'll pick it up and they understand the limitations of what I prefer to work with people like this. Then there are two sides of the coin, right? And I've seen and I still see both sides of the coin, which is the person that is overly optimistic and the person that is overly skeptical. And so I actually like because it's an easy sell for the overly optimistic person. They already bought into machine learning, while the skeptical, you have to build a POC, you have to show some kind of result and get them to buy into that. So I think it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, I think I talk about this to other people in data science and AI, and they say, I think Hollywood has destroyed the image of what AI can do. Everyone thinks about, iRobot, a walking, talking, robot that's going to take over the world, can outthink us. And I think some of what it can actually do is a lot more tactical and very narrow. We might be decades away from, what Hollywood represents. But I guess in your shoes, you're going to have to deal with that stigma no matter what.
No, you're right. In fact, I avoid using AI. I don't like that term in general. At least I think that term should mean something else than what we call AI nowadays. But it's a hype and it sells. So people like that. So the job, I don't use AI, except when I'm trying to sell something or sell some idea. When I get buy-in, maybe that might be a good point. But for the job, I don't think data scientists and machine learning engineers are really calling what they do day-to-day AI. I could be wrong. I'm speaking for myself, to be honest. But companies love to label their products AI and artificial intelligence, and it goes from there. But I try to stay, put my feet on the ground and focus on what I believe is a more practical perspective.
I think you got definitely an interesting few projects probably ahead of you. I guess if you're looking at, what your hopes are, I guess you've been in this role for a couple of months. If you were to kind of project forward 6 months, a year, where do you hope to be? What do you hope to have seen kind of accomplished in maybe your first year at Frontdoor?
So what is it that we're doing, right? And I wonder how that compares with other folks that are listening. But we have all these siloed data sources, right? And what we did is we put everything in a Snowflake. Boom. At that point, the business is free to start using a lot of data that they couldn't use before, join data and access data that just wasn't accessible because it was in production databases. But that's one step. Now, data is mostly in raw format, so it's organized and formatted differently. And so what we need to do is to build a data warehouse. We need to model that data and build tables, build views, think about what is the best design, get the requirements for the business in terms of what kind of reporting they want to do. And that takes a lot of work. That takes a long time. And you break that down into area by area. You don't have to go and do everything at once. But I would love to get to the point where that work is done. I think that's one of the pieces. The other piece on the data engineering side is streamline all of our reporting to a single tool rather than we are heavily using Looker today, but I would love to get to the point where we don't have other reporting tools that we currently have and have only one. It just is, everyone is speaking the same language because the legacy tools, they also point to legacy data sources. And if you see a metric of sales, for example, or metrics of costs, and it comes from a legacy source, that's not going to match necessarily the new sources, right? The new sources, hopefully, which have been curated and agreed upon by a committee of data governance. So speaking of data engineering, I don't know if you want me to talk about data science as well, but I think on the data science side, we went from a place where we didn't have machine learning, and we're now building our first machine learning system. So that's what I want. I want to have some significant impact using machine learning, which I'm very confident that we will, but just having that work in production and see the actual impact in terms of revenue or cost savings, I find that to be very rewarding to have that direct impact in the business and hopefully in our customer satisfaction as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you got a pretty full roadmap in front of you. It sounds like some exciting stuff they've brought you on to tackle. Thanks for being on the podcast. I think this was really interesting in terms of how, you're looking to kind of, shift some of the older legacy stuff to more modern infrastructure. I appreciate you sharing.
Sounds great. Yeah, my pleasure. I love to talk about this stuff. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Appreciate you for being on again. And thanks for everyone who are listening. That's it for this episode. We'll be back again for another episode, and we'll definitely have a new set of topics, new guests. And in the meantime, I always ask for two things. One, please keep subscribing to the podcast. It's done really well. I never expected people to listen. I thought I'd record it and it would be just fun to do, but people are listening and it's been an amazing experience. I still am getting topics that you guys want to hear me do future podcasts on. So please keep sending that in. That's really been helpful in terms of, lining up the right guests for those topics. So until next time, we'll be back. Thanks.